Everyone, and thank you for joining us at this afternoon's Governor of Victoria Export Awards Application Support Webinar. This is the fourth in the series of webinars. Tomorrow is the last one. I'm Collins Rex, and I'll be your presenter for this afternoon's session. So today what we're going to cover off is the second part of the business management question. And this part of the question is all about financial management. A very important part of the question, and certainly one that often raises a number of issues with applicants. So I'm hoping that by the end of today, any issues that you might have faced with this or any questions that you might have had will be allayed, and you'll be able to do this without too much fuss. Just a quick recap for those of you that may not have attended any of the previous webinars. It is a two-tier process for the Export Awards. You enter initially through the Governor of Victoria's Export Awards program, and if you are a winner in one of the 13 national award categories, you automatically become a finalist in the 56th Australian Export Awards. That is the National Export Awards. You have only one way to enter the nationals, and that's to win at state level, and there's only one application. So you don't need to complete a second application form to take part in the nationals. The application form that you complete for the Governor of Victoria's Export Awards is also used for the national. And there is only one program at state level for every single state and territory in Australia, and all of those winners at that national level then go through to become finalists in the national competition. You see the 13 award categories in front of you there. You can enter in multiple categories. Just bear in mind that even though you can enter in a number of different categories, you can only win in one. So you might be a commandee in more than one category, but you can win in only one category. Most of the categories are sector specific, but there are a few cross-cut categories, e-commerce being one of those. So you might be an agribusiness exporter, for example, but you sell exclusively online, in which case you would also enter for e-commerce. In the emerging exporter category, is for those exporters that have been exporting for 3 years or fewer. And that, again, you could be in any sector but be an emerging exporter. The regional exporter, similarly so, you can be in any one of the sectors, but provided your head office is in a regional Victorian area, then you can enter for regional exporter. And small business is for those businesses that turn over less than $5 million a year, and again, irrespective of your category. So those are the 13 national awards. If you win in any one of those categories, you automatically become a finalist at the national level. Victoria also has 3 specific categories: the Victorian Exporter of the Year, that is drawn from the winner of each of the 13 national categories; the Victorian Export Award for Innovation Excellence, for which you cannot enter specifically. The judges will nominate companies that they believe have done enough to be considered an Innovation Excellence Award winner. So very important, if you do want to be considered for this award, that you emphasize the innovative aspects of your business throughout your application. And that could be in terms of the product or the service that you present, but it could also be in terms of a specific kind of business process that you've implemented, a novel way in which you sell your product or services, which is not necessarily the norm in your industry sector, the way in which you train your staff, etc. So anything that you consider to be particularly innovative, you need to highlight it. The Victorian Women in International Business Award is one that is specifically entered, and you will find a specific question related to this in the application form. So make sure to complete it if you want to be considered for the Victorian Women in International Business Award. And although all the awards are business focused, this particular one is given to a woman. So it's an individual award, and it is obviously going to go to the woman who is the driving force in your export business. So just bear that one in mind. Just a quick overview of the application in its entirety. There are 5 main sections: the executive summary, about the business and its product or services, the international business strategy, business management, and international business planning and direction. Now, we've covered off the first 3.5 of business management. Today, we're going to concentrate specifically on the questions that relate to financial management and data that make up part of business management. And tomorrow, we'll be looking at international business planning and direction. As you complete your application, very important that you understand what you do well, and certainly what you understand better than the competition, and that you present that throughout the application in a language that the judges understand. Do you understand that the judges are not necessarily an expert in your field, and they certainly are not an expert in your business? So don't be using jargon and language that is so specific to what you do that the judges may not have a clear understanding of your business at the end of the process. So let's get straight into business management. As I mentioned yesterday, business management counts for 25% of the overall score in your application. Yesterday, we covered off the aspects HR and risk management, and today we're going to pause at financial management. So 4.3 of this question is all about financial management. The question specifically asks you to outline the financial strategy that you currently have in place to meet your business's objectives. It also asks you to address how the business manages financial related risks. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. What do we mean here? When we're talking strategy, we are talking about the why as opposed to the how. So this question is all about the underpinning strategy that you have in place to make sure that your financial management in every shape, size, and form is there to help your international business succeed. So it's not just the fact that you use a certain bookkeeping system, for example, or that you have people who are au fait with foreign exchange, etc. It is the reasons behind your financial management. So it could be things like you have a cash flow management process in place because you have anticipated the long lead times in getting paid in your particular sector from an international perspective. So your strategy is to always have sufficient cash on hand to see you through that difficult cash flow period, or that you have developed a relationship with your bank or an organization like EFIC, for example, to make you a little bit more comfortable when it comes to managing cash flow. So the judges here are looking for your international financial strategy. Now, part of that strategy is that you need to have identified any financial risks that are related to your international business. Don't just gloss over the risks. It is very important for the judges to see that you have understood the risk aspect and that you have mitigating factors in place to help you manage that risk. So here the judges are looking for things like foreign exchange risk, the fact that you've identified that there could be a risk in foreign exchange through not pricing appropriately, which is why you've worked a buffer into your price, for example. You don't necessarily need to be a foreign exchange expert, and the judges don't expect that of you, but they do expect you to have acknowledged the fact that foreign exchange could be a problem and that you deal with it appropriately, either through a relationship with your bank or a specific forex provider, or that you have a natural hedge in place. They also want to see that you have addressed the issue of liquidity. How are you going to, for example, deal with an exceptionally large order which is much bigger than your usual run? How are you going to deal with that from a cash flow perspective? How are you going to tool up, etc., to make sure that your business doesn't suffer as a result of your success? And of course, credit risk is a big one. So how do you deal with the potential risk of non-payment? That could be as simple as you don't extend terms to your customers. You always take a deposit up front, or indeed total cash up front, etc. But you do need to acknowledge the fact that there is potentially a credit risk, and you need to talk about how it is that you mitigate that risk. If you do extend terms, is it that you have trade credit insurance, for example, and how does that work in your particular business? You're allowed 400 words for this question. And again, bear in mind, you are lodging online. The online system does not allow you any extra words. So think it through very carefully and make sure that you have everything in there and that the system doesn't cut off anything important. Question 4.4 is your financial results reporting. So essentially what you are going to provide here in an online table is your profit and loss statement. It needs to be for the last 3 financial years. Now, the application closing date this year is the 28th of June. Obviously, if your financial reporting year is 30 June, you're not going to have the final figures for the most recent financial year, and you're going to have to put in estimates. And that's perfectly fine. The judges understand that, but you will be providing financial data for the past 3 years, with the current year being the most recent. You will have to identify your net profit, your assets, your liabilities, etc. in this table. Shouldn't be a problem for you to get the necessary data. Your accountant will be able to assist you with this one. Now, just important to point out here, and this is a question that has been raised in the past, applicants have been concerned about the financial data possibly falling into the wrong hands. I would just like to assure you here that every judge who will be looking at your application does a number of things. They sign a confidentiality agreement and they sign a non-disclosure agreement, and those are very seriously looked at and enforced. And in the time of the Export Awards, certainly the time that I've been involved, which is well over 10 years, I cannot in one case remember an instance where somebody has talked out of school about any financial data or indeed anything else contained in an application. And in addition to those various non-disclosure agreements and so forth, all judges also sign a non-circumvention agreement. So if it looks as if a judge in any shape, size or form has a conflict of interest with your business, they are not allowed to judge your business and they will not see any data that is pertaining to your application. So please be comfortable. You are able to provide that information without any concern. The final part of this question then, and this is probably the most important part of the question, 4.5 gives you an opportunity to explain any unusual financial results, and you have 200 words in which to do that. Now, what do we mean by unusual financial results? Well, obviously, we mean a spike of one form or another. So let's say, for example, your profit for the past 2 years was tracking at round about $50,000. And suddenly in year 3, you're showing a profit of $1 million. Clearly, that's going to ring some alarm bells with the judges. They're going to want to know what it is that led to that phenomenal increase in profitability. You are going to have to explain that in words. So it could be, for example, that in the previous 2 years you were investing heavily in research and development, and that affected your bottom line. Now the research and development has culminated in products actually hitting the market and translating into sales, and suddenly your profitability has increased. On the same side of the equation, if your figures have gone down dramatically over the course of the past 12 months or over the course of the first 2 years or anywhere within those 3 years, if there is a downward turn, you also need to explain that. And that could be that you've taken on more staff because you're expanding into new markets, and as a result, your profitability is down because you've expended more money. If you are down in profitability in your final year of figures, it is important not just to explain why you are turning down, but how you are going to be turning this around so that there will be an upward trend in future years. So in the case of you're expanding into new markets and that's been a drain on your cash reserves, in the following 12 months, you anticipate that that new market will now be on stream, sales will have picked up in that market, and the investment will be returned in increased profitability going forward. So it is very, very important that you do explain any unusual results. If you don't explain those results, the judges will simply raise a red flag around your results, and it will affect the way in which your overall application is judged. The final thing that you need to answer in this question is whether or not your business has received any state or federal government grants in the past 3 years. If you haven't, obviously you just tick the no box. If you have, you need to provide details of the grant amounts and what the grants were for. This applies to things like the Export Market Development Grant. So if you got the EMDG in the past 3 years, you need to state that you did, how much, and obviously for Export Market Development Assistance. Any other government grants that you might have received, be they commercialisation grants, be they the Victorian Government Voucher Scheme, etc. So any grants that you got, you have to indicate not just that you received them, but how much they were for and what you did with the money. So you don't need to go into War and Peace here. Purely Export Market Development Grant, that says exactly what it is. If you've got a specific grant to tool up in your factory, for example, or to improve your technology, etc., just a few words explaining what that was for. So that's the final part of the business management question. And again, as I mentioned, this question overall counts for 25% of the weighting of your application. So very important that you understand the difference between strategy and activities in these questions, and you give information accordingly. If you don't do so, you could run into some problems with this particular part of the question. Just want to summarize some of those key dates before we finalize today's session. Applications close on Thursday, the 28th of June. That means close of business, which for all intents and purposes is 5 p.m. Victorian time. Please remember that you are lodging online. Online systems are notorious for crashing just when you don't want them to. So please do not leave it to the last minute to lodge, because if you do, you might find that you cannot lodge in time. Now, in the past, there have been extensions given to the application closing date, but please do not depend on that. Assume that there will not be an extension and that you have to lodge by 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 28th of June. The Victorian Award Ceremony is held on the 14th of September, and that's held at Government House. It's a fabulous night, great opportunity for you to come along and bring your staff. All applicants are invited to the awards ceremony. If you win one of the 13 national categories and you compete at the national level, the national awards ceremony is on the 4th of December. Now that one moves around from state to state, and they haven't announced yet where it will be this year, but you'll certainly get the information in good time. If you have any questions about your application, particularly around technical things, issues that you might have with the lodgement, issues with the lodgement website and so forth, you need to contact the Department of Economic Development, Jobs, Transport and Resources at the Victorian State Government, and Carol Tobolov is your main contact there. Carol's details are on the screen. Feel free to give her a call or drop her an email. Carol will be able to help you with any of those technical issues around your application. If Carol isn't available, Fiona Cheng, and again her details are on the screen, will be able to assist. So either Carol or Fiona from a technical perspective when it comes to lodging your application, etc. Carol is also the person to contact if you would like some one-on-one coaching with me to help you with your application. Now, I'm not going to write your application for you, but I will talk you through the issues that you're facing, help you with some specific hints and so forth around your application. And Carol is controlling the schedule there. So if you would like some further assistance and one-on-one assistance, have a chat to Carol and she'll be able to help you. Where do you apply? Well, if you haven't already registered on the website, that's the address in front of you there. You do need to register on the site, even if you haven't started your application. Once you've registered, you're then in the system and Carol will contact you if it looks as if you've registered but you haven't started or you haven't completed your application. So please register and register in good time. As I mentioned, there is assistance available for your application. You can email me directly if you just have a quick question that you want some help with, and I will endeavour to answer it for you. My other contact details are on the screen. I'm really notoriously difficult to catch on the phone, so send me an email. But if you want some specific one-on-one coaching time with your application, please contact Carol, and Carol will schedule in some time with you, either face-to-face or over the phone or online, whichever is the most logical way to do that. So I'm just going to click back to Carol and Fiona's contact details if you want any more assistance with any of those issues. And that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you very much for your attention. Tomorrow, which is the final one of these webinars, we will be looking at the final question, which is all about the forward planning and what you have in mind to expand your export business going forward. So thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to having you on board again tomorrow, and I look forward in time to seeing your application come through the system. Thank you very much and good afternoon.